It's the smallest details that can sometimes trip you up, especially if you're not in agreement about which way to go on those exact details. And in the world of professional wrestling, there are plenty of those to go around, 7 of which are the topic of this episode. Because today, Dave knows 7 small details that spark big debates. This episode is all about the minor things that can affect wrestling in a major way, and also the arguments that people have over them. And at the end of the video, feel free to weigh in with your thoughts on each of these as well. So, with that being said, let's get started. Ropes. A point of contention with ropes comes when asked, what should they be made out of? Old school types and WWE fans may be partial to good old-fashioned actual rope. However, others tend to prefer metal rope or elevator cable wrapped with a foam padding. Now, you may never have even known that there was a difference or that different companies use different material, but to some, this makes a huge difference. Elevator cable can be the preference, especially for wrestlers who do a lot of springboard moves and alike. Because it has less give and is a stronger material, it tends to snap back much faster, allowing wrestlers jumping onto them to get better spring. In contrast to this though, wrestlers who prefer the old-fashioned way will note that running the ropes is better on traditional materials that have a little more give because you can hit them as hard as you like without getting winded. And others just prefer springboarding off of old-fashioned rope in general. And in terms of fan aesthetics, some will argue that the way real ropes bounce on impact in the ring makes hits look harder, while others will claim that bouncing ropes make things look a little too flimsy. Which is better? Well, to each their own, but for me, I'm an old school kind of guy. The striking sound. Even if wrestlers were punching as hard as they could, it's hard to hear a thunderous punch in a big open arena full of screaming fans. So you can just imagine then what it takes to make a worked punch have a sound, which is why many wrestlers take measures to add additional sound effects to their hits. Now, there are tons of ways to do this. Some wrestlers will stomp while they punch, while other wrestlers will use an open fist to create a pocket of air that will pop on impact. And some other wrestlers will slap themselves when they strike. And for anyone who's seen a super kick party, you've definitely seen a lot of thigh slapping. And when it comes to kicks, there are those who feel that slapping is completely unnecessary, because there is a lot of protective leg gear that you can wear that will do a lot of the work for you. Wearing kick pads can protect your opponent with soft cushioning for the impact, but will still give you a great sound. Also, you can wear heavy pants like martial arts gis that can catch a little bit of air when you strike, making a popping sound. Plus, there is also the other school of thought that your opponent is actually the one who should be doing all of the work, slapping your foot as it comes in to kick them. Also, there is the whole idea of just using your voice. Some wrestlers will actually grunt as they strike. And finally, you could just not do anything. Sound effects, or the measures to make sound effects, are seen by some to make wrestling look fake, and that the visual is all people need. For me, while I don't think sound effects are necessarily 100% needed, I don't mind them either. And truth be told, I do think it depends on the situation, and sometimes I think a combination of methods are actually the best approach. Striking out. Speaking of strikes, there are those who will argue about if they belong in wrestling at all. In amateur wrestling, throwing a punch will get you disqualified real fast. After all, the art of wrestling is supposed to be about grappling, not kicking or punching, which is why some people believe that strikes should be limited or eliminated altogether. Throughout history and all around the world, various promotions have had different rules when it comes to melee attacks. Some require no closed fists, while others have banned strikes altogether. Personally, I do think that punches and kicks are a necessary part of the equation, but for the most part, I just hate strikes being used as finishers. Size issues. There has also been a lot of raging debate on if size plays a role in being a main eventer. Some will argue that a heavyweight champion should be just that, a heavyweight. Now, this is especially true for many old school WWF fans, as the WWE is sometimes referred to as the land of the giants, although there are some exceptions to that rule. On the other hand, some people think that wrestlers shouldn't be judged by their height and weight, believing that there is much more to mass appeal than simply mass. And promotions like Ring of Honor are known for putting the title on guys who are not prototypical in terms of what the traditional WWF body type is. And also keep in mind that many boxing promotions recognize anyone over 200 pounds as a heavyweight, so WWE's 205 weight limit for the cruiserweights is still above boxing's heavyweight classification. As far as I'm concerned, I do think for the most part wrestlers in the main event should have a certain look to them, but I do make exceptions for certain wrestlers depending on what they bring to the table in other fields such as charisma and in-ring ability. The come down match. Now, I've talked about this before, but the concept of a come down match is something that not everyone agrees with. For the uninitiated, a come-down match is a low-profile, less anticipated match that is placed before the main event. This gives audiences time to go to the bathroom and cool down before the grand finale. This way, when the final match does hit, fans are fresh and ready to give their best possible reactions. Now, some people believe that this is dumb. If the main event was good and not just WWE shoving the same guy down our throats that nobody wants, then maybe crowd reactions will always be good. And also that the card should always be built with the order of match importance getting bigger and bigger throughout the night. But there are also those who will say that a come-down match is inevitable and that audiences have been conditioned to them and that the average set of human lungs will be blown out no matter what by the end of the show. Personally, I do understand the need for them, but I much rather not have them if I can help it. I think your place on the card matters, and working your way up the card is an honor and not something that should be given just as an excuse for a potty break. The champion's entrance. Wrestlers making grand entrances have become a big part of wrestling, presenting larger-than-life characters in grand fashion. And speaking of tradition, when it comes to title bouts, traditionally speaking, the champion always comes out last. However, in recent years, WWE has sometimes had their champions come out first and the challengers coming out last. Now, this has especially become true when the WWE really wants to promote a particular wrestler as a megastar. Now, there are those that will say that this undermines the champion by making another wrestler that is not the champ come out last. For me, there is no excuse for it. A champion always comes out last. Period. Comment section. Finally, the last thing is on the commentary team and where they sit. Now, traditionally, ringside commentary teams have been the way to go, but there have been times when commentators have been moved away from the ring. Now, why do this? Well, there are a few reasons. First, by moving commentary tables away means you can open up a few more ringside seats, which all cost a pretty penny. Now, while you might think of this as a mere drop in the bucket for a big company like the WWE, a few $1,000s is still a few $1,000s. And another reason why commentators are sometimes moved away from the ringside area is because of TV. Since the broadcast is being done live, what the commentators commentate on should be what the viewing audience is looking at. If a commentator is calling what he sees in the ring, he might jump the gun and call something like a run-in before the cameras actually have a chance to cut to it for the audience at home. And I know that's why they have their little monitors on the table, but if they're only going to be watching the action on screen anyway, then why bother having them at ringside in the first place, especially when it ends up costing you a couple of grand. Moving away from the ring and even having them face the other direction like how some promotions have done it removes all temptation to look at the in-ring action and makes them call only what is being seen on TV. However, others will state that keeping commentators as close to the action as possible will allow them to better feel the energy of the performance and it keeps them being part of the show. Plus, this gives ample opportunities to have wrestlers interact with them too. Personally, right in front of the action is where I think commentators belong. Alright, so there you have it. 7 minor details that have big debates. What are your thoughts on these? Let me know down in the comments and go ahead and subscribe here as well as supporting me on Patreon just like Shockwave1209. Thank you so much for watching and as always, this has been Dave Knows.